Hey folks, hope you're doing alright. You want to have a little nerdy chat about history and whatnot. Particularly, as the title says, you wouldn't have guessed, worst weapons. It's something that I've talked about, well, I've talked about the worst swords that I personally consider to be such, which is generally difficult to really pinpoint. Because for the most part, things that people relied on to save their lives weren't really that terrible normally, right? I'm gonna have to double check. Hang on a second. It's highly unusual that the chat is completely empty. Oh, here, let me fix that. Why? Because as soon as I take a sip of anything, there's immediately a question, what are you drinking? Sure, fire away. In this case, it's sugar-free iced tea. Anyway, yes, so it is clearly rolling now. Gotta give people a little more chance to find their way in because I just announced this, like 5 or 10 minutes ago, so not much of an announcement. Anyway, so, yeah, you may or may not have seen my video about what I think are the worst swords. And what I want to know is, what do you folks think? What are the worst, and weapons in general, not just swords, anything really in history. What do you think are some of the worst? Now, one thing I personally notice is the list of the worst and particularly indisputably terrible ones grows longer the more recent you are in history. Particularly in the World Wars, they came up with some ludicrous stuff that just did not work. Poorly designed, poorly executed, etc. Right? Hey, thank you, some person. Speaking of super chats, just to let you know, whatever super chats come in and PayPal donations, if you want to use the link in the description below, any of that I will put toward the health fund. Because now that I'm a bit over a week away from the trip, where I go to Europe to see a bunch of specialists that I have medical appointments with to hopefully figure out what's going on here, or rather how to treat it. I have a fairly good idea of what it is, but hopefully to find treatment options. Now that I'm only a little more than a week away from that, I can tell that it's even more expensive than I thought. So just so you know, any donation I will put toward that, just in case that you're donating in order to, fund tatami mats or more swords or whatever for the channel. That's not what I'm prioritizing funds for right now, just so you're aware. All right, but either way, I very much appreciate it. Helps a lot. Thank you, Knar. Thanks for your content. You're welcome. Thank you for consuming it, so to speak. All right, so you narrowed down what it is. Yeah, I mean, as far as I can. I mean, quite often, the people who are dealing with something, like the patients, know more about it than the doctors because they look into it in depth. And anyway, I don't want this to be about that. Let's try to stick on topic. Before we get to do your opinions, so that's what I'm mainly interested in here. I want to see what you folks think. Why don't we start out with what someone else thinks? I've got the world's worst weapons. Yeah, this should be interesting. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because, you know, seems like a bit of a dick move. You're supposed to buy the book and read it yourself after all, right? But just a couple of... Most of these are firearms anyway, and I'm going to focus mostly on melee weapons, even though we can absolutely talk about firearms too. Let me just see, what was the first one here on the list? Okay, so, of course, it has nunchucks. I really don't agree with that. I've talked about that before, but I really don't think nunchucks are as bad as people make them out to be, particularly when you compare them to stick. Like, I've done the tests myself. I've seen other people do some, and from what I can tell, nunchucks are not weaker than sticks, or like flexible is not inherently weaker than rigid. If anything, flexible might actually be slightly more powerful. So that's not the problem. And, you know, lack of defensive options, like you can't really parry with them as well, that's totally legit. Not being able to thrust, totally legit. But other positives are often kind of ignored, like how unpredictable they can be, how hard they can be to defend against as well, and how deceptive they can be, quick too, and also how damn concealable they are. I mean, those are really, really easy to carry, right, which a stick of equivalent length is not. Thank you again, some person. Hey, get funded. All right, I very much appreciate it. Definitely going right in the medical fund. Okay, so those are my 2 cents on nunchucks. I think they are, you know, maligned unfairly. I don't think they're that bad. I wouldn't even say that they're bad as such, period, you know. The next one, though, I totally agree with. Don't scroll to it. Wait, what? Why does it scroll down when I go mouse wheel up? Anyway. The next one is, in fact, let me zoom in a little bit here. Next one, there is nunchucks. I was saying nunchucks again. Shuriken. Throwing stars. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it depends on how you want to rate them. Like, as an actual weapon that does what other weapons are supposed to, awful. Because they're not lethal. They really aren't. It would be extremely difficult to accomplish that, to actually end someone with them, unless you're using poison or whatever. But as more of a tool, like distraction and what's the word? Kind of temporarily reducing someone's ability to fight. That's kind of how I see them. If you throw them in someone's face, yeah, they're going to be like, oh, crap. You know, they're going to flinch, even if not. Like, either they're going to flinch or they're going to take it in the face, which, either way, is going to affect their ability to fight. Right? So, good as a support kind of thing. If you rate them as a weapon the way they do others, then trash. You know, I think they're definitely worse than throwing knives and axes and especially spears, you know, javelins and all that. Very much so. Then there's the briquette saber, which, yeah, it looks crappy. I have never handled one, either original or reproduction. Not a fan of the all brass handle, personally. A lot of people are not a fan of that one. It depends on how good the blade is in terms of quality. Like, it doesn't seem like the worst thing ever, but I can definitely see there were better swords and sabers in history. Thank you, Pretzel. Rumbling Rose from Kingdom Hearts 2. Let's not do fantasy. I do want to stick to history. I mean, I'll take a look at it because you did a super chat and asked. But generally, I don't want to go fantasy because then the list is endless. There are so many awful fantasy designs. Like, you can't even list them all, you know? Okay, so it's extremely fantasy. I've talked about the problems with Keyblades before. The fact that the guard is completely wrong, like it needs to be rotated to actually align with the knuckles, because otherwise you can't really use it that way without breaking your wrist. You would have to hold it such that you can only slap with the flat of it, and because it clearly has a striking end, I mean, it's a key, so it has to have that to look like a key, but yeah, terrible. And this is even worse because then it's got spikes on top of it. It's even, I mean, come on, it's even got thorns pointing toward the hand. Like, come on. Like, practically, this is a disaster. But yeah, let's stick to history. Thanks, Taylor Parker. As someone who has also been through the ringer with physical injury, I understand the struggles. Thanks for the content and stay positive. Thank you. I honestly, at this point, I wish it was just injuries, but unfortunately, it's injuries and then what I'm like 90% sure is MECFS on top of it. Yeah. Thank you, Sick Metal Maggot. Hey, I love the briquette saber. Briquet, I should say. I know how to pronounce French, mostly. Slipper, if bare in the hand, but with a thin leather glove, actually feels pretty good. I have a rare WKC one. Well, in that case, I'm going to refer to you because you have one. I can only go by what it looks like, on the surface, but I'm absolutely open to different opinions. If you think it's actually good, or at least not bad, yeah, I'm going to go with that. Hey Scott, how are you doing? And thank you. 7-branch sword. I was actually thinking about kind of including this and talking about it, but the problem is, from what I can gather, it's a ceremonial sword. And that's not really fair, is it? If you were to include ceremonial swords, then you can also do like wall hangers and mall ninja shit, and like it wasn't a real weapon. So you can't really call it the worst weapon when it wasn't intended as a weapon. This was apparently a gift for an emperor, if I remember correctly. Yeah, to a king. So I don't think that counts. It looks terrible, yeah. I mean, it doesn't look terrible. Like, as an art piece, it's fine, but as an actual weapon, I don't know. I don't think so. It wouldn't do all that much. So one more from this book that I want to comment on, and then I'll just focus on your suggestions, because that's kind of the point. the Apache pistol. The name refers to a French gang, actually, in the late 19th century. And yeah, I mean, look at the thing. It's got a, like, it folds open. When it's folded, it's a knuckle duster, a terrible one at that. Then you fold it open, and then you've got the revolver part. The trigger folds open without trigger guard, and then you've got a folding blade as well that comes out. Absolutely ridiculous. Must be a real pain in the ass, or rather in the hand, to hold and do anything with. It's cool, don't get me wrong. It's cool, it's unique. It captures people's attention, obviously. But in practical terms, ridiculous. Nightmare. I study with a school that includes some Skallagrim content. And yeah, it's fun, but if I have a choice, I'd probably go with any other weapon. Yeah, I will say, though, I don't mind it that much. Because I do like the Kama a lot, and sickles in general. Sickles are super effective. They're devastating. The only problem with that is they tend to be really awfully short. So you have no reach. So I guess then the idea is, with the chain, you have a ton of reach. It's not the most damaging implement. And you can easily tangle yourself up, but that's a skill issue. If you practice a lot, if you get really good at using them, honestly, I think that would actually be pretty decent. The main problem I see is, and then we tried this out in sparring, even though with the caveat, of course, that neither of us are trained in the use of them. But the problem I see with that is, if you fight someone with a sword or any other long weapon, your opponent just charges in. It's just like, you know what? Fuck your iron weight at the chain, at the end of a chain. I'm just going to run straight at you. So if you swing that thing at me, it's going to go past me anyway. Yeah, it might wrap around me, but I don't care. I'm just going to come in and stab you or whatever. That's bad. That's quite a problem to deal with. That's how I see it. Thanks, Johannes. It's technically a tool, not a weapon, but pitchfork. Yeah, pitchfork is a worse trident, or bident. There are some battlefield polearms that are like that. In fact, actual tridents too. And yeah, pitchfork is just a worse, less durable version. So, yeah. Thanks, Scott. If you're going to discount ritual/ceremonial weapons, you have to ignore lots of Chinese weapons that were used by Shaolin for training, not fighting. Yes, and that is what I'm doing. That would be the low-hanging fruit. You can definitely pick some of those and be like, I don't know about that. All right, so what else do you folks think are some of the worst weapons? Pitchforks are heavy? I don't know. The ones that I not that I've handled a lot of pitchforks, but I've had like a couple in hand on occasion, and I mean, okay, some of them are, you're right. Some of them really are quite heavy, surprisingly. Others not so much. The Urumi, I've already talked about that. I've included that in the video about the worst swords, even though it's not actually a sword. It's a bit of a cheater. But yeah, those are awful, in my opinion. Like, as an actual weapon for like real life combat. Cool for demonstrations and everything, but that. Thanks, Sick Metal Maggot. Imo, any American infantry sword is terrible. The US made great swords, but terrible training, so they all fell by the wayside. We prefer tool weapons. Best American sword cutlass or sword bayonet? Yeah, I mean, not that I know that much about American swords, but yeah, generally I would agree. Lantern shield. That came to my mind too. And I used to think, like, what the hell were they thinking? This is ridiculous. Has too many different functions and it is overly complicated. But I've seen sparring with a reproduction, albeit a simplified reproduction. It wasn't quite as overly complicated as the original, but that actually went better than I expected. So maybe it's not that bad. I don't know. I'm also often tempted to bring up combination weapons, at least some combination weapons, because with some of them they just went too far. I don't actually mind axe guns, you know, where you have like a wheel-lock pistol or something with an axe blade, a small axe blade at the end of the barrel, or on the other side, on the butt end. But some of them... Oh, in fact, which was the one that I wanted to bring up? Hang on. There's a wheel-lock falchion warhammer thingamajig. I showed it in a video. It's been a hot minute. I think it was like 2019 or so. Now, where is that? It's at a French museum, the Musée de l'Armée, I think. Now, where is that? Oh, I know how to find it. Hang on. If you search combination weapons and then check, I think it was on Wikipedia, and yeah, that's right. Then it has the picture there, but that's not the picture I want. Where is that? Where's the other picture? Oh, there it is. Okay. That's a bit too large. Here. This thing is ridiculous. You know, I always respect the craftsmanship of combination weapons. A lot of the time, that was the sole point. They would just make something to show off their skills as craftsmen, and, you know, for it to be a prestige item, a collector's item for nobles and whatnot. So they put a lot of effort into it. They made them as complex as they could for that purpose. And this is not one of the most complex ones, but oh boy, I mean, nothing wrong with the handle. That's a classic hunting sword handle, hunting sword slash falchion. You've got the wheel lock there, you know, barrel here, and there's a hammer at the end of the barrel. Yikes. One thing you really don't want when pointing a firearm, like, or any kind of barrel at a target, is for there to be a weight that pulls it down. So you're like, ugh. It's awkward. I mean, you also have a significant amount of mass in the rear, but I mean, would it cut? Sure. Would it hammer? Yes. Would it shoot? Yeah, presumably. Would it handle Like ass? Yeah, I do think so. And by that I mean like a real dump truck, like a heavy one. Anyway. Thanks, Pretzel. Have snowballs ever been used in warfare? Not that I know. But people have done some mean things. Putting like rocks and worse things in snowballs. Oh yeah, the Colibri or Colibri pistol. I remember seeing that. Isn't it this super ridiculously tiny thing? Yeah, 2mm. Exactly. It's just, yeah, it's not gonna do a thing. It's like, look at this thing. 2mm. 2. 22 long rifle is 6mm. Puny. What are you supposed to do with that? I mean, wait, hang on. Was it actually ever... I can't remember if it was intended to be used in any kind of serious way, or if this was just like, I don't know, a parlor pistol or something. Oh no. Advertised as a lady's self-defense weapon? No. Absolutely horrendous, terrible idea. This would get a lady absolutely wrecked, quite frankly. Like, if a woman is in a position where she needs to defend herself and then shoots a guy with 2mm, that's not going to injure him in any significant way, but it's going to hurt him, it's going to piss him off even more. Irresponsible, absolutely irresponsible to design this and then sell it, market it as self-defense. What were they thinking? That's easily one of the worst weapons ever. Might feel like a bee sting, yeah, if that. Thanks, Scott. Are we including weapons used in formalized dueling? If so, then my vote is for a burlap sack with some rocks in it. Yeah. Yeah, Talhofer's man versus woman setup is ridiculous. Yeah. The thing is, I feel like how bad something is doesn't matter as much with a formalized duel. Because, I mean, in this case, that's specifically set up to be fair. Whether they succeeded with that, I don't know. But, like there's a bunch of weird dueling weapons, but both have the same, right? So it doesn't really matter that much how bad it is if it's fair, if both have the same. Okay, it would be unfair if, for example, if the weapon you choose for both is a meteor hammer and only one of the two duelists is trained in the use of it. That would be unfair, but generally you get the point. Oh yeah, 22 is dangerous, but 2mm, not so much. Thank you, Bubonic Cure. I like that name. Just giving you some funds on top of Patreon. Be well. I really appreciate it, and I'm trying. It's been rough lately. Like even though I've been pacing and conserving energy I wanted to say, but it's not just about energy. If this was all it is, if it was just fatigue, that wouldn't be so bad. But the flu-like symptoms that keep getting worse with crashes. Anyway, I don't really want to talk about that, but yeah, I'm trying what I can. All right. Thank you, Phoenix Paw. Of all potential weapons I've got at home, I go for my zombie tools, the spit. Do you mean that's the one you'd pick if you'd have to pick a single weapon, or is that the one you would pick as the worst? That's kind of an important distinction. Dragon head guillotine, I still do not believe that was real. Like, real. But, I don't know. Or at the very least, I very much doubt that it was ever actually used and successfully used. You know? Velocity does have more of an impact on energy transfer than mass. Oh yeah. Although momentum matters too. But if you're referring to the 2mm thing, the problem is it's not just that. It's such a like puny, tiny cartridge that there's hardly any powder in it. You know, it's like the primer and a few grains of powder. It just doesn't fit much. So it's going to be anemic, regardless of the size of the bullet. The portable guillotine basket was made up for the movie, if you mean that one. Oh, so it was actually fully made up. I remember it being featured on Deadliest Warrior, and like I remember they were acting like this is a real thing, but I could be misremembering. I remember the Colibri to be mainly a field-protected kind of weapon, not meant to do damage in the first place. That's actually the worst. I really hate field-protected kinds of self-defense thingamajigs, because it's worse than having nothing. Because then you get a false sense of confidence while you're completely exposed, really. You've got nothing, but you think you've got something. And placebo's not something you want when it comes to protecting yourself, you know? Thanks, Decimated. Is it true that the tribes armed with iron weapons defeated the tribes armed with bronze weapons and ushered in a new age? I don't think so. I really don't. I'm pretty sure iron was mostly about availability. Because the thing is, for bronze, you need two elements. You know, you need brass and, copper and tin. Sometimes I forget, is it copper and tin or is it copper and zinc? But I think copper and zinc makes brass, right? It's tin, yeah. Okay, so you need copper and tin. And tin is the harder one. Not everywhere you have copper will you find tin, whereas iron is easier. Like it's one resource and it's fairly easy to find. So I think it has a lot more to do with that. Oh, okay. Now, I was wondering, like, what's the dad for? Okay, it was supposed to be that. It's just a typo. I'm like, I was just reading it at the time. Then after I read the sentence in the back of my mind, I was like, huh? What is that referring to? Yeah, no. Thanks, Gustav. What about primitive weapons like shark-toothed swords, obsidian axes, boomerangs, and such? Imagining breaking after one hit. That's what I think too, yeah. In fact, I did very cautiously test the shark tooth club that I got. And as careful as I was, one of the teeth already broke. So they're quite fragile. And the idea that a lot of people have about that I think seems plausible, is that stuff like this is basically like a disposable weapon where they're supposed to break off and stick in the flesh. Same with obsidian blades on a makohit. Imagine having a bunch of obsidian shards in your flesh. Yikes, right? Debilitating for sure and very painful. And the thing is, you still have the blunt impact tool, right? Like you still have the core of it, you still have the paddle-like club, even if they all break, right? You can still hit with that. So if you look at it as an enhanced bludgeon, it makes a lot more sense. The only downside is it's so much work to make them. It takes a lot of time. Not so much with the shark teeth, although attaching them still takes a lot more time than just making a blunt club. Thanks, Clint Leetwood. I recently purchased a 6-foot-long Flamberge Zweihander museum replica sword for my wife. She loved it, and it's hanging in her office. She's a keeper. Indeed. Nice. No, the earliest iron weapons were definitely not as good. I mean, at that point, bronze had been around for a long time. So they've perfected it, pretty much, and they made very high-quality bronze weapons. The question is, were the earliest bronze weapons better than the earliest iron weapons, or vice versa? I would guess the earliest iron weapons might have been better. I mean, before bronze, you had copper. Yeah, they did make weapons and tools out of copper for a while, but they were fairly quickly replaced by bronze. I mean, quickly on a scale of human history, you know? Yeah, those kinds of like a shark tooth or obsidian tipped lined, anyway, equipped weapons were probably intended to be fairly simple to replace parts. I just replace individual teeth or blades or whatever fairly easily. Matt said iron was less brittle than bronze, so longer blades could be made. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if, I mean, sounds plausible, but I never thought of bronze as brittle by any means. It's, you know, bronze blades tend to bend rather than break, and iron bladed swords were also had a reputation for bending. So I don't know. Based on my experience with bronze, doesn't really seem right, but I don't know enough about the metallurgy of iron versus bronze. And did they actually make the blades longer? I guess at least at a certain point there were longer iron blades than you would find, or longer blades in the Iron Age than you would find in the Bronze Age. Bronze and iron are basically identical. That's what I've been told too, that they're I mean, not identical, but fairly close. Particularly work-hardened bronze. Doesn't seem that far off. So what about other weapons in history that you consider pretty bad, if not downright terrible? I feel like there aren't too many, because like I pointed out in the beginning of the stream, like when your life depends on something, you want to make sure it's not a, you know, hot mess. It's not a dumpster fire. I vaguely remember that you need hotter furnaces to work iron and bronze. I think so. The melting temperature of iron ore. I do think, I also do remember that there's like a couple of 100 degrees more required for iron. But I could be misremembering. Let's see. Yeah. Bronze seems to be up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. Can very well be lower. Whereas iron is over 1,000. Well over 1,000. So yeah, you remember correctly. Sticks and rocks carried us for ages. They did. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to forget how long the Stone Age is. You know, like Paleolithic is an extremely long time. I mean, particularly because it spans more than just Homo sapiens sapiens. All right, so even if we say the Upper Paleolithic, that's when you have actual modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens. 50,000 to 12,000 years ago. That's a long time. I mean, the Neolithic was also still pretty long. I can never remember the exact numbers. Let me quickly look that up. About 8,000 years. 8,000 years. All right, that's an extremely long time. That is several, like the Bronze and Iron Age together several times over. That's an extremely long time. Let alone Paleolithic. Like, you know, if aliens had or other civilizations had visited planet Earth over like a very long time period, like a few times, you know, like let's say once every, I don't know, 2,000 years or 5,000 or something, or less often, once every millennium, say, they would have been like, this species will forever be primitive. They will never get anywhere. It's been, 50,000 years later, and they're still bashing rocks together. Like it's wild when you think about just how incredibly long those time periods are. History is just sped up to such a maddening pace where it's like, okay, now there's a lot of stuff happening in 100 years. A century is nothing. Back then, in the Stone Age, nothing happened in 100 years. I mean, obviously things happened, but there was no major progression. Things changed, of course, and you can see differences in pottery and this and that and the other, but just in terms of major changes in technology, early on that took forever. So you could have revisited Earth again and again for so many millennia, for tens of thousands of years, and you'd have been like, oh, they still haven't done anything. They're still at this stage. And then, from the zoomed out perspective on a broad scope, then suddenly things take off and there's crazy fast developments, relative to the history of humanity, let alone the history of the Earth. If you go by Earth and, the entire history of all hominids is nothing compared to the age of the planet. Anyway, those are the things that I like to kind of think about every now and then, just kind of, remind yourself of. Does it make sense? Thank you, Amaliva. I appreciate it. Yeah, we went from horses to space in like 70 years. Yeah, literally. It's crazy. Like a century later, boom. Space travel. I mean, not really, but yeah, going to the moon. Would you consider traveling Central Europe? Yeah, definitely. Czechia, Hungary, Germany, Poland. Yeah, for sure. It's really annoying to me. When I go have those medical appointments, I'll be in Germany. Originally, I would have liked to go either to the Netherlands or, specifically Amsterdam, or maybe London, or Oslo, perhaps. But this is the most prudent option because I know someone who will give me free accommodation there, and not having to pay for a hotel and stuff or Airbnb is good. So Munich it is, and I would love to go elsewhere, because like the biggest thing is always going across the pond. Like the flight is expensive, it takes long, it's exhausting, etc., etc. That's always kind of the big pain in the ass, right? Yeah, we're still married. Don't worry. And it would make so much sense to use the opportunity to visit other places as well. Go to the Netherlands, go to Belgium, go to France, go to what have you, Czech Republic, Denmark, etc., etc. There's so many places, right? But I can't handle it right now, unfortunately, unless I get some kind of treatment to deal with these symptoms. It's not happening. Which is a real shame. When I'm over there, I'll do what I can. I really want to go look at some museums. It's just, I can't be on my feet for very long, so I might have to figure something out. I would really hate to have to resort to a wheelchair. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, don't take this as me looking down on people who do need it, people with chronic illness or disabilities or anything like that. It's, you know, it's very important for them, and absolutely zero, like, there's not even a point in saying no judgment. Of course not. Why would I? You know, it's great. But for me personally, it's rough. It goes against my pride for no good reason, really. But like, I don't want to admit to myself that it's that bad, you know. But I don't know if I can do it any other way. Because whenever I overdo it, the MECFS crash is so bad. Like, you know, the Mace versus Flail video I did. I put up like some behind the scenes footage on Patreon and for YouTube members, and yeah, I definitely don't want that in public because it shows the struggles I had, and it was extremely taxing physically. And afterwards, I was feeling seriously sick to the point of being debilitated for like 2 full days. And do more cardio, that's exactly the wrong way. I can't blame you for saying that, because if you haven't looked into this condition, you don't know how it works, but physical activity makes it worse. It's just the sickness response keeps getting worse, and people have become bedbound from just pushing through, trying to just keep pushing, and not listening to their bodies. And this is how I've been getting worse too. That's a problem. Right. Then how will we be in 10 years? That's exactly what I'm concerned about. Because if I keep overdoing it, if I keep doing more than, you know, my body in its current condition can handle with this illness, then I'll be... I might also end up bedbound. I don't want that. So the problem with that is you have to retain a certain level of activity. You have to do as much as your body can handle, but not too much. And that's supposed to be the road to recovery, that you figure out this range in which you can operate, where you can challenge your body just enough that you don't crash, but you don't cross the line where it just drops. Because that's how it keeps getting worse. Anyway. It's so weird to see you speak as normal, as the healthiest man can get, but knowing your condition. Yeah, the reason why I talk like this, as opposed to some streams, I was basically like, all right, I guess we're gonna talk about things. And in some streams you can really see it because I overdid it. So that was the crash. And lately I've been more careful with it. I've backed off, and I'm starting to learn when my body is telling me, hey, if you continue this, you're gonna be fucked up. Right, so this is why I can talk normally. I still feel like shit. I still feel like day 3 of COVID, but I'm not in a crash, right? So the baseline feels pretty shitty, honestly, but at least I can function if I don't overreach. It's weird. That's what makes it so hard to deal with. Anyway, I don't want to keep going on about that. not your problem to deal with, and you know, hopefully it'll get better. Oh, I've been monologuing so much. Sorry, deadbeat husband, I overlooked your super chat, and thank you. Have you been to the Arsenal in Graz? I have not. I'd like to, but yeah, I don't know when I'll be able to do that. It wouldn't even be that far from Munich, but again, I can't really do that. In fact, I'm honestly pretty worried about the flight, because flights are, particularly night flights, are exhausting at the best of times. So that'll probably knock me down for at least a day afterwards, probably 2. But I have appointments all the time, so. But it'll work some one way or another. I'll have to make it happen. Watched for some years now. I still wonder, are you Canadian? Yes. Yes, I am. Officially, Canadian citizen. So it's a very sudden drop-off after reaching the max your body can handle, and you have no warning when that happens? Damn. Yeah, there's kind of a warning. Like, now that I'm more attentive to it, I can sort of tell. But the problem is, the warning is a worsening of the symptoms. Like, I have symptoms non-stop every day. Like, every day I feel sick, like, to some degree. I've gotten used to it at this point, which is why, you know, I function like this because I have to, and it's not getting better than this, but it gets way worse than the way I'm feeling right now, and it's sudden. Like, I can do something, I can walk around, and then suddenly it's like, oh, suddenly there's like a. The best way I can describe it is like an explosion of static in my head. Like, my brain feels awful all the time, but then it's like, it's suddenly like a spike. It gets way worse and super messed up. And then that's when I know that, oh shit, if I don't immediately rest now, I'll crash and I'll be messed up for a while. Thank you, Barry. What's your opinion on Philippine-style weapons and other styles from Southeast Asia? I like them. I like Filipino weapons quite a bit. They tend to have really tiny guards, which I'm not a fan of, but there are some really nice designs. And a strange one, too. Well, a few strange ones, but the Campilan? Campilan? I'm not sure how you pronounce that really. If you've ever seen that, it's a very interesting asymmetrical broadsword, basically. And there's a lot of shapes that I quite like. Chris swords I very much appreciate. Not to be rude, people, but Skull said like 3 times already that he doesn't want to talk about his health. Well, I did end up talking about it anyway, so it's fine. I never actually wanted to talk about health. It's just that it's gotten bad enough that I can't hide it, you know, and I don't want people to think that when I'm less energetic or doing more low effort videos or whatever, that's just not caring or being lazy or anything like that. You know, I do what I can. I very much care to make the best content I can. It's just my capacity is severely lowered, and I wouldn't be able to hide it anyway, because when I'm over there, I'll be there for like 3 weeks at least. And during that time, I'll have to keep putting up videos. There's no way I can make enough ahead of time. So you'll see it anyway. And in fact, some of what I'll make, it will probably be a bit about this journey of trying to find someone who can help with it. Because I won't have too many options there for videos to make, and I won't have a lot of capacity either, because just going to all the appointments is going to drain me quite a bit. So it is what it is. I'm not trying to complain about it. I'm just telling you so you know, right? That's if there's a bit of a dip, that's why. It's not because I don't care. You know? Otherwise, I would have kept it to myself because, you know, why would I bother you with that? So it's not your problem. In fact, I already notice right now the feeling in my head is getting worse. So I probably have another half hour max, probably less. Might be more like 15 minutes, but I'll let you know. You know, if I'm suddenly like, hey, sorry, I have to nope out, it's getting too bad, then that's why. Right? Yeah, the sensor bar I very much like too. And yeah, I agree with you too, especially the design with the knuckle bow. Yep. High price of your health for people's entertainment. Well, this is also my job, so there's that. And I'm very glad that it is, because if I had a 9-to-5 right now, I have to apply for disability. It's just straight up not possible. I'm still in the phase where I can't. It's still hard to come to terms with it. Like, it feels wrong to even say that. You know, it's like, I don't want to. I've had a hard time admitting how bad it is, and I still struggle with it. I'm still like, man, this is such bullshit. I wish I could just pull myself together, but that's not how it works. That's what I have been doing, and it only made it worse. So, yeah. I hate being weak. I despise it. But lying to myself and others about it doesn't help either. You know? It is what it is. I would say to get rest before you get to that point, please. You're right. Yeah, I should. That was a video on a two-handed Kopesh a while back, I think. Yeah. That was, I made that, what, like half a year ago, about? I think? No, longer. It must be almost a year ago, right? Can't quite remember. Brain fog is one of the symptoms too, so yay. I always thought I just have a bad memory because, you know, personality quirk or whatever, but nah. It's most likely this as well. The more I learn about it, and the more I reflect on it, the more I realize that I've clearly had it my entire life, just on a much, much lower intensity level before. Background is sick as fuck. Thank you. I do like it. When it comes to home decoration, to my mind, there is no such thing as too many cozy lights. We got quite a few at this point, and that's how I like it. Thank you, Phoenix Paw. I hope your priorities are 1, health, physical and mental, 2, economy, 3, friends and family, 4, content, 5, quality, quantity and frequency of content. Yeah, pretty much. I used to put, quality, yeah, everything content, including quality, quantity, and frequency. I used to put that higher, but yeah, it can't do that anymore. For now, I still hope that I'll be able to recover from this eventually. I refuse to believe that I can't. One way or another, whatever it takes. Because there's so many things I want to do that you need to be healthy for and have energy for and everything. Yeah, you're right. It's the diagnosis is by way of exclusion. Like you test for all the other things that could be causing these symptoms, and when it's none of them, you know that, well, it's got to be this. We've already ruled out most. Part of, all the appointments is, or really, that's what this medical trip is about, to rule out the rest. And I don't want to wait for years. Like, I've got a referral here in Canada, but with how overburdened the medical system is, it's likely going to take at least a year, probably longer, to actually see specialists. So, yeah. You've got community, you need not feel guilty for discussing anything. I appreciate that sentiment. Not everybody's that understanding. There are definitely a lot of people who are just judgmental and close-minded and just don't listen, and they just jump to ignorant conclusions. But, it is what it is. Fuck them, basically. Like, I can't concern myself with that. It's just irrelevant. I just have to deal with it one way or another, regardless of what people think. But, that's why I tell the good people, or, at least people who are willing to listen, actually, instead of just jumping to conclusions in their mind. The thing is, I get it. Because before it got this bad, I didn't realize how it can be either. You said, I despise being weak with such anger with yourself. Don't you think you're being too unfair to yourself? No. I mean, if I take a step back, yeah. If I imagine a good friend, someone that I know, was in the same situation, and they said that, then I would tell them, hey, you're being too hard on yourself. So, yeah. If I could hold myself to the same standards, that would be helpful, but... Anyway. How about a potentially bad weapon? A two-handed rondel dagger. So you mean an S-stock? Kind of. Now, an S-stock usually doesn't have the rondel guard and pommel. It would be even worse if it had rondels. But overall, there are S-stocks with very similar blades, just much longer. I mean, if you meant literally a rondel dagger just with a much longer handle, then yeah, that's awful. That's true. People know what they were capable of, and not being able to do is very frustrating. That's exactly what it is. Like, I look back and I'm like, how the hell was I able to do these things before? Back then? Well, because I was not that sick. And even at my best, when I was as fit as I ever got, I was constantly tired. That's not normal. You know? Anyway. Enough about me. Enough grumbling and whatnot. It doesn't help. Invisible illnesses suck big time. My sister has endometriosis and people think she's lazy, but she's in constant pain. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people, I mean, how are people supposed to know? Well, they're supposed to listen to what you say, but yeah. There are also people who fake things, of course. As usual, a few assholes ruin it for everybody, you know, that kind of thing. I've been dealing with chronic pain after a bike destroyed my leg. I'm sorry. I know what that's... I mean, not that bad, but yeah, chronic pain from injuries. I know that. I remember your accident and other problems. I want to wish you strength and courage. You will get better. I appreciate it. Thanks. I'm just going to call you Linda, because I'm just looking at that. Where do I put the emphasis on the name? But it'll do. A double-ended rondel? Yeah, that would be a very bad idea. How viable do you think modern riot shields would be in medieval times? Depends on which ones, but ballistic shields would be fantastic. I say that because some of the riot shields are not actually that durable. I did a test on one quite a while ago. And the problem with that is if you cut into them from the side, they break apart. So, yeah, if you cut into the rim, that's when they fail. If you take hits straight on, they're very effective. And I mean those polycarbonate shields and whatnot. The clear ones. But okay, I think that's my sign. I do need to stop. Sorry about the loading time there. It was just kind of flaring up, and my heart is acting up too, which is also part of this. I've been checked. It's not because I'm fat. You know, that's usually the fair enough assumption, I suppose, that that's not actually it. There are cardiovascular problems associated with ME/CFS as well. So, yeah, I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Sorry if it was too mopey or kind of like miserable or whatever. I was trying not to. I was trying to use what energy I have, but it's just eventually it does a nosedive, and then it's hard to hang on. But I'm sure you understand. So, hope you had fun anyway, despite that. Thanks for having a chat, and I'll see you, some other time. I don't know.